Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Krista Moore Show. This show is brought to you by K Coaching and ID Growth, and I'm thrilled to have a special guest with me today. And as you know, this is a talk show format. We're going to have a girl conversation, and you get to listen to us. We're going to be talking about something that's important to all of us, and that's a sense of belonging and feeling like we can walk into a room and kind of own the room with confidence. And I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Wendy Gates Corbett. And she's a friend of mine. We've done some work together, but she's also the president of Amazing Company. And you're helping a lot of athletes and speakers with their presentation skills and their messaging. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Wendy, and get to know our audience and they can get to know you.
Well, I am delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My company is Refresher Training LLC, and I work with professional athletes and professional speakers, helping them deliver their presentation with more impact, whether that's delivery coaching or clarity on their message or visualizing and amplifying their presentation slides.
That's great. And I know that that part about the slides, you and I did some work together, and many of the folks on the line have taken a lot of my training. And I've looked at Wendy as an expert for helping kind of pull together those slides to get the message out appropriately to the audience. So that's just wanted to share that with you. So one of the reasons that I wanted to have Wendy as my guest is we shared the stage at a conference, and when she was up on stage telling her story, I was just sitting there in the back of the room like with my mouth dropped. And it was very moving for me, and I started to realize that, oh my gosh, there are so many other people that feel this way, maybe not to the extent, but and there's a solution for what we can do to be able to network better, stronger, and be comfortable with ourselves and with audiences. So I'd like you to go ahead and tell me when you first discovered that there was something not quite right.
Well, what happened is this the car story?
No, I think maybe when you were talking about, like, you would go into an event and you just weren't feeling like you belonged. And I remember that was one of the first things that really grabbed me.
Well, I started my company 5 years ago, and before I started my company, I had a 20-year career in corporate training. So I had a great corporate training network, and I felt like and believed that I was an expert in corporate training. But helping professional speakers was a new business for me. It was a new pathway, and that meant that I needed a new network and new circles. I wasn't giving up my old network, but I needed to expand my network and create some new circles. One of the things I did to help expand my circles is I got involved with places like the City Club of Raleigh. It's a professional club for business professionals and for executives, and I would start attending meetings there and start off feeling like I wasn't sure whether I belonged there. There was this nagging voice in my head that would ask me, do you belong here?
Yeah.
And it was kind of surprising because on a conscious level, I'm fairly confident and assertive and comfortable in starting conversations with strangers. But every now and then there would be this voice in my head that was nagging at me.
And I think when that happens, we close up, right? We like get this weird feeling inside of us, like, oh my gosh, you know, who looks nice that I could go talk to, and maybe I need to go to the bathroom for the 10th time, or it kind of holds you back.
It made me shrink.
Yeah,
and that's
great way to put it.
It's not a way to grow your business or expand your network. And it wasn't a strong voice. It didn't control me, but what surprised me is how frequently I heard the voice. And so that got me interested in figuring out, where is this voice coming from?
Yeah.
And that took me on a journey.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. And it goes back a long way. And a lot of the folks on the line know that I do a lot of research and talk about your 10-year-old self. And this kind of fits into that. But yet it was at a younger age than 10 that you had an experience that really affected you.
I've heard the question, do I belong here, throughout my life. It's been the question in my head. And what I discovered when I explored where this voice came from is it comes from when I was 5 years old. When I was 5, my next door neighbor was Laura, and she and I were friends. And when Laura and I would get into fights, she would snarl and go, "You don't belong here. You're different." And it was 2 sentences, but I thought it was 1 sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And I internalized that. I learned that when you're different, you don't belong. And Laura was telling me that I was different. And so I believed that I didn't belong. So in my case, I'm different because I'm biracial. I'm adopted by a white family, and we lived in a white neighborhood. So from Laura, I was very different. Yeah. And it's her voice that tells me, that's her voice in the back of my head that tells me that I don't belong.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But I love that you discovered that, right? I mean, people will go their entire life confused about why things are the way they are. And that's why we really enjoy going and doing more reflection kind of questioning to dig deeper and to really understand some of that.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of an aha moment. It's like, oh my gosh, this is where it's coming from. So then what did you do with that?
With understanding that it's Laura's voice that's telling me that I don't belong, I was able to realize that Laura was 7 and she no longer gets to tell me what to do. Realizing that it was a 7-year-old girl in my head gave me strength and courage to tell her to shut up.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, and you know, when you think about that too, gosh, if an impact like that can happen at 5, that has affected you your entire life. That's pretty astonishing, you know? So I guess to all those parents out there, be careful what you say to your children.
Well, and I think
for these mean girls and friends that your children belong with.
I think we all have voices in our heads that are telling us something. For many of us, it's a message that we don't belong.
Yeah.
For me, it was my next door neighbor telling me that. But I want to encourage everyone to face the voice in your head and figure out where it's coming from. And once you figure out where it's coming from, you will gain the power to tell it to shut up.
That's so great. So I have this voice in my head for a lot of years where I cared what other people thought. Like, what will the neighbors think? And my mother's out there listening. She'll know where I got that from. It's just like the way the family was, you know. My grandmother was worse than my mother. What will other people think? And then as I matured and got older, I felt that was holding me back from being who I am meant to be and living a life of more purpose and meaning. And it's interesting because I just figured that out probably August of last year. You know, I mean, I was getting there and realizing that it was the voice in my head. But so on that same subject, worrying about what other people think is very similar in that, do I belong or don't I belong, or am I different, or how can I fit in?
It's so true. The all of those questions are really closely related, and they boil down to, where do I fit in?
Yeah.
Do I fit in?
So tell me, this had to have taken a toll on you, emotionally, mentally, you know, spiritually, through those years. What were some of the impact of that voice over the years?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is realizing that was my normal. Wondering whether I belonged in any situation, in every situation that I walked into, whether it was friends, strangers, employers, clients.
Yeah.
I lived with a constant awareness of always assessing my environment and crawling inside your head, and then your head, and then your head, trying to figure out how you saw me.
Yeah.
So
and worrying about that.
Yes.
And the energy around that.
Constant worry and constant energy. That was my normal. Spending all of that energy in other people's heads, realizing that I was never being me. And when I think about that be you, not them is kind of my motto, but being you, it's almost like they didn't get a chance to experience you. No. You weren't present. You were thinking what they were thinking, and you weren't physically there. No,
mentally there.
I wasn't. I was there. I was buried deep inside.
Yeah.
But I was always trying to be the you that I I'm sorry, I was trying to be the me that I thought
I wanted you to be.
Yeah. And that's a lot of energy. It was a lot of brain and emotional energy and a lot of morphing. I was a chameleon.
Yeah.
I was a
Chameleon's a good word.
Imposter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't expressed. It also meant that I walked around with a shield, like a coat of armor that was really thick, because I was afraid if you saw the real me that you wouldn't accept me. And so I had to guard myself, or I thought I had to guard myself against being having confirmed that I didn't belong somewhere.
Yeah. So this, I remember you telling me the story about being in the car. And I'd love for her to share this story with you, because I feel like this was your awakening.
It was a huge awakening. So here's what happened. Well,
how long ago was this?
This was 13 years ago.
Perfect.
But I remember it like it was yesterday, especially on days like today where I would be driving with the windows down, because I was driving with the windows down. I was driving down Wade Avenue in Raleigh, and I was jamming to my favorite Mariah Carey song. And I was just all in my head and singing out loud and happy as could be. And I pulled up at a stoplight, and on one side of me was a car of white women, and on the other side of me was a car of black women. And I flipped out because I didn't know who to try to be like, whether I try to be accepted by them or by them. And the kicker was that these women had no idea that I was flipping out in my car. But I was more focused on trying to figure out who to be accepted by. Strangers who had no clue that I even existed, because they were all in their own worlds. And I realized that all I wanted to do was sing Mariah Carey. I wanted to do my duet with Mariah Carey, but I was flipping out, wondering, desperate to be accepted by strangers who had no clue. And at that moment, I realized how exhausted I had been. And I was in utter turmoil at a stoplight because of strangers. And it wasn't them. It wasn't them saying, we're telling you you don't belong. It was me. It was
Laura.
it was Laura, that's right. It was my voices in my head that were driving that turmoil.
And there's a lot of analogy there too, for me, with it being Mariah Carey, because she's biracial, so that's interesting. So then what? What happened next?
When I realized how exhausted I was, literally at that stoplight, I asked myself, what about me, Wendy? Forget about the women in the car. Forget about Laura. What about me? And that question scared me, because I hadn't asked myself that question ever, I don't think.
You meaning that you matter?
What do I want?
What do I want?
Exactly. What about
I think your me was beating up Laura in your head. She was coming back saying, well, what about me? Forget about what she thinks. So fast forward, and you speak and you write and you research on this subject, and it's really kind of been a bit of a movement for you in your career. And I know that you were speaking recently at a couple of locations on the same subject. So I kind of want to share with the audience how you discovered a few tips or techniques that anybody can use, regardless how loud that voice might be, to feel confident and comfortable, feel like you belong when you're entering a room or around strangers, or needing to be more comfortable with yourself. So let's go, maybe take them step by step. What would you say the first one is?
The first suggestion I have is something that I use when I walk into an environment, whether it's a networking event or a client pitch or a prospect or speaking at a conference or in front of an audience. When I find myself starting to think, I wonder if they think I'm and you can fill in that blank however. But when I have too many thoughts that start that way with them,
I wonder what they, yeah.
Or I wonder if they think I'm smart. Do they think I'm qualified? Do they think I'm, successful?
Yeah.
Fill in that blank with whatever your fears are. When I have those thoughts, a string of thoughts that start with them, that's when I will pause and ask myself, what about me? Because I realize that I'm starting to crawl inside their head and making them more important.
Yeah, and that's what something that you recognized early on, that's where you spent a lot of your time, was worrying about what their thoughts were, opposed to what was important to you. So what would be an example of that, let's say, personally?
Personally, I have an example that's both a combination of personal and professional.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For me personally, it's important to be an ally for the LGBTQ community. On a personal level, I do that very easily. Both my husband and I vocally support the LGBTQ community. What I've thought about for the last several years is I'm a business owner, and I also have an opportunity as a business to become an ally for the LGBTQ community.
And having a bigger impact.
Yes, and having an even bigger impact by adding a company name and a business support
element to that. Yeah.
Right, to my personal support for the LGBTQ community. I started having lots of thoughts about, I wonder what they will think, thinking about the business community, potential clients.
Could you lose clients?
Speakers? That's right. What would they think?
That's legitimate, though, when you think about it.
And it is legitimate.
It's natural, maybe.
Yes, it's a valid question.
Yes.
It's still one that I struggled with. And I thought about it from so many different directions and had so many thems that I was thinking about, that I finally paused and realized how many them thoughts I was having.
Yeah.
And asked myself,
what about you? What about me? And then realizing that what's important to you, you weren't going to compromise.
That's right. So to make decisions based on what I want, what I think, and what's important to me. And I came up with an answer for that is based on what I believe and what I value more than what I think they value. It's not based on that.
And then what would be the second question or tip that you would give our audience for when they're feeling that sense of not belonging or questioning credibility?
So for me, the first two questions go hand in hand. The what about me is sort of the brakes to stop that train down the negative thought tracks and giving other people more power. The second question is, what do I want, or what do I think? What do I need? Those two questions go hand in hand, and I use them not to always put my needs in front of someone else's, but at times when I am making their perceptions of me and their thoughts about me more important than my thoughts about myself, when I'm making their perceptions more important than mine.
So when I think about that question, what do I want? And I put it into a business perspective, I'm thinking walking into a networking event, instead of worrying about what everybody else thinks, I say, what about me? Like, it doesn't matter what they think, blah, blah. And then that second question kind of brings it back to why you're even there. Like, what do you want out of this situation? And really thinking about, well, why am I here and what do I want to gain? So you're kind of setting that vision or setting that stage for what's important to you to accomplish during that time.
Yeah. It brings me back into my own sense of belonging, my own self-acceptance, and what it is that I want to bring to that environment. For me, in a networking sense, I want to represent my brand.
Yeah.
I want to expand my brand. I want to convey myself as confident, as successful, as an expert.
Mm-hmm.
And when that's very different than the kinds of thoughts that I have and the kind of person that I present, if I'm focused on what they think, it's a very different person.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said what you have to bring opposed to what you want to gain. And I think it's a little bit of both,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I like looking at it as what I bring to that situation that is all of me.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like what I bring to a situation, because I can control that.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily control what I gain, but
Or what people
about
think.
me. That's right. But it's all about me. I can control what I bring.
So that what that does for me is it's a sense of self-awareness, but also self-confidence comes from that. I would imagine that, and I think of it as like a little bit of self-talk, but it's self-confidence that comes from those two questions.
It really does,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows me and reminds me to be all of me.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I love your quote, the
be you, not them.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Don't be them. And it's so true. When I remember to bring all of me, it's all of me that is unique and different in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people want to see. They don't want to see them. They don't want to see a mirror. They want to see someone who is fully themselves. And when I focus on bringing all of me to an event, particularly I think about a prospect
Mm-hmm.
situation. When I bring all of me to a prospect situation, I bring a different level of confidence. And
that would be
more
an outcome
often
of it.
than not.
Yeah, than you might have seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that self-confidence inside is what's showing on the outside.
That's right.
You know, I don't know if you've ever looked into this, but I kind of have just this fleeting thought that if we're in this room with hundreds of people, there is no way that everybody's like comfortable in their own skin and being themselves, because you see them being the imposter or being the chameleon, and everyone kind of has this sense of wanting to be needed or accepted or
That's
liked
right.
or whatever.
Yes, we all have radar on that's outwardly focused.
So what I really liked about what you said is you can be your unique self, and it's that uniqueness that separates you from the crowd, separates you from the competition. And if you're trying to be like, and to a lot of my office products folks out there, if you're trying to be like Staples or, like the other competitor and not understand what your own value and diverse, what you have to bring to the table and what makes you you and unique, then you're probably going to look like everybody else.
That's right.
And not stand out in the crowd.
Precisely.
Yeah. That's cool. So what about the third one?
The third question snuck up on me. I had been doing really well with the first two questions and had built a nice habit of reminding myself before the train got too far down the negative thought track to pull myself back and remind myself to focus on what I wanted. And then one day I was walking into the gym. It was on a day that I felt particularly fat. And I was getting ready to go to a Zumba class.
We never have those days.
No. I was getting ready to go to a Zumba class, and I love Zumba because it's fun exercise.
Yeah.
So I was excited, getting ready to get my Zumba on. And I walk in the front door, and all of a sudden, this voice on this side of my head said, I bet they think I'm fat.
Oh.
Out of nowhere. And it wasn't like a single person in the lobby. I bet
they.
she thinks I'm fat or he thinks I'm fat. It was some anonymous they. And all of a sudden, I felt really super self-conscious and I wasn't happy. I was overly sensitive and I felt like crap.
Did you leave?
I didn't leave.
Good.
But this is where the third question comes from. All of a sudden, I asked myself, what if I didn't care what they think? And as soon as I had that thought, I immediately, the self-consciousness disappeared. I felt
That's
much
a great
lighter.
question.
And I felt happy again, excited again to be going to Zumba.
Yeah.
And so that question is one that allows me to release the anxiety, the weight of anxiety, worrying about what they think, to ask myself, what if I didn't care about that? And it lets me release that anxiety and the weight that comes along with that anxiety.
That's a really great question. And I didn't know that we had this commonality before we're really talking about this today, about caring what other people think. So I'll just tell you a quick story. So I belong to this entrepreneurs organization, which is a worldwide organization, and they have mastermind groups, and we break up into small groups. And we're there to support each other and to give us encouragement on issues and things that we're having or challenges in our business. And I was always like talking about getting my book done, but I never got it done. And they're like, well, why aren't you getting this done? Like, what's holding you back? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I'm afraid what other people will think. And it's like, will they not read it? Will they not like it? Like, what if they think that it's not of value? And what if no one buys it? And so these are the things that were going in my head. And he's like, well, and it's for this group of guys, and they're like, well, who's we? Like, who are you talking about? Who are you concerned about that is not going to be accepting of that? Or who are you caring about? And I'm like, I can't really name anybody. It's like, it's just the universe,
a universal we.
A universal we. But anyhow, I've been getting over that.
Obviously, because you published your book.
Well, I didn't publish it quite yet, so I'm still hanging on. No, actually, we have a contest out today on the design of the cover because we're coming down to the wire.
So you're good.
I'm almost there.
Good.
Yeah, I think the release date we have to set the date yet, but it looks like it's going to be in the middle of September. So, and if you don't read it, it's your tough luck because it's some really good stuff. And I'm not going to worry about it.
That's right.
That's great. Well, it was good having this conversation with you. And I think that our audience certainly has gained something from this, realizing that you're not alone in sometimes feeling this way. But let's go ahead and repeat those 3 questions that they can make sure they take a note of and try it the next time that they're going to be at a networking event or a little apprehensive about meeting some new people.
Great. So as soon as you start realizing that a lot of your thoughts start with them, what they think, ask yourself, what about me? That will allow you to crawl out of their head or their frame of mind and focus on you. The second question is, what do I want? Or what do I need? Or what do I think? As opposed to what they think, what do I think? Make sure that your own thoughts and wants and needs are more important than theirs. And the third question is, when you start thinking, I bet they think I'm blank, or I wonder if they think I'm blank, ask yourself, what if I didn't care what they think? All 3 of those questions together as needed can help you refocus your acceptance inward and focus on self-acceptance and reclaim your own sense of belonging instead of relying and depending on others who have no idea that you're relying on them to belong.
And I think the outcome of that in any situation, getting there, through that reverse self-talk kind of confidence boosting or putting yourself first, is that there is a lot of talk today about authenticity and being who you're meant to be and discovering your purpose and your true self and be you, not them kind of thinking. And I'm wondering if you have any last words of wisdom or thought on just that subject alone and what you might give people advice or direction on, since you kind of went through this journey of self-discovery. What can they do to be more themselves and be comfortable with themselves?
One of the things that I'd encourage you to think about is that we so often think that we need to be like everyone else, but think about who stands out in your mind. When you're at a networking event, if everyone is the same, it's the person who is uniquely themselves that stands out in your mind.
Mm-hmm. And they shine.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the memorable person. And I want to encourage you to be that person. And if you bring all of yourself to an event, to a prospecting call, to a client engagement, you will stand out because we are innately, uniquely different.
And you're being authentic, and it'll
Yeah.
show. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you'll own the room because you can.
With ease and confidence.
With ease
Mhm.
and confidence. That's great. Well, again, thank you so much for being here, Wendy. It was a lot of fun. I did want to also let everyone know that we're going to show a slide to give you information on Wendy if you wanted to reach out to her or contact her. And she's got a lot of speaking engagements booked talking about this subject, and for both personal associations and also business. So take a note of it. We'll share that with you right here. Is that the right email to get a hold of you?
Mhm.
Best one?
That is.
And then you can be found on LinkedIn, Facebook. What do you use socially?
LinkedIn.
Primarily. Yeah.
LinkedIn is my primary.
Okay, so you can connect with her on LinkedIn. So I just want to tell everyone to please join us the third Wednesday of every month. Actually, next month we have Alan Hoffler. Yeah.
Great.
So we both know Alan, and he's a absolutely fabulous. What would we call him? A presentation.
Public speaking
Public
coach.
speaking coach. Yeah. So he's a public speaking coach, and for those of you that are afraid to get up in front of a crowd, or even just he's gonna teach us a few tips and techniques for how to stand up in front of a crowd and be accepted, be confident, and just really have good presentation skills. So I look forward to Alan. Is it May 16th? Yeah, third Wednesday of May already. So, but please join us then, and also check out thekristamooreshow.com, because all our past shows are out there and they're categorized. So if you want to go ahead and listen to them as a podcast or watch the video, they're available for you. And keep following us on the Krista Moore Show Facebook as we do Facebook Live. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.